Hello and welcome to another Bearfoot Studios guide of Necromunda, in which we're going to be going over the Wyrd powers in the game, as based on how they're used in the book of the Ash Wastes rulebook, not the Outlands. So confusing. And the powers in the book of the Outcast. Now, I'm doing this now because I always actually thought that the Wyrd powers in the game were rubbish. And even when the book of the Outcast came out, I didn't really glance at them that much. I skimmed them at most because all the powers were sort of paled in insignificance to popping someone in the head with a bolt gun. It's been like that, and I've been planning our new campaign, and I was going to go with isotropic fuels, and someone said they wanted to run Palatine Enforcers, and this is in the Ash Wastes. We already had some Bad Zone Enforcers, so I thought, why would Helmwar be sending his Palatine Enforcers to somewhere where there's already a group of Enforcers? It's because it's a Ghast-rich region. Basically, it got me looking at the Wyrd powers again, because there's going to be loads of Ghast about in our new campaign. There are multiple ways to get Wyrd powers, and that's hiring bounty hunters, which gain access to Wyrd powers as of the Book of the Outcasts. Being a Chaos cult, Gene Stealer cults get them. Delac get their own special list, which we won't cover today. That'll be for a Delac guide, if and when I do one. And also by consuming vast quantities of Ghast, which, as I say, that's why we're doing this guide. Now, the powers are actually really good, really good. It really prompted me to want to give a rundown for you guys and also my players in the campaign so that they can really get involved in psychic powers. So psychic powers are cast as a simple, basic or double action, it says it in the power, and require a willpower test. Obviously you want a low willpower so you can roll high to succeed, and then each power does the effect that we're going to be going into and how good they are. Some powers require a maintenance of control, and that's a simple action next turn. If you don't maintain control, they end at the end of the next turn. So you can cast it with, like, say, a basic action in one turn, not maintain control, and still get its effect in the next turn. So there is ways of using the powers with a charge action, say. Now, you can also concentrate before you cast a Wyrd power, and that's a basic action. That gives you a +1 to your willpower test. Using Wyrd powers, you roll this willpower test. If someone else has a Psyker within 18 inches of your Psyker, they can initiate a psychic duel. Basically, the opposing Psyker rolls 2d6 and tries to beat your score on the willpower check. What this actually triggered in my mind was that you could actually snarfle down some Ghast, become a Psyker for the game, and disrupt other people's Psykers. So there's this Ghast using meta, and also the ability to use some Ghast to initiate psychic duels and make other people's powers worth a lot less. So when our players in a campaign, it's going to be actually gaining credits for selling Ghast is the main mechanic for gaining credits. They're going to have the option of snarfling down some Ghast to disrupt other people's powers that they might have only gained because they took some Ghast. You can also get a Perils of the Warp by rolling a double 1, or you can have, say, like an Irresistible Force miscast, which is on a double 6. Now that can range from you blowing up and being taken out of action and centering a blast over yourself, to casting the power and taking a strength 4 hit, which isn't bad, to demonic possession, where you get Super Saiyan for a turn and then go out of action at the end of the next turn. So there's a big range there, but it's a 1, like from a stats perspective, I think it's a 1 in 18 chance. So it's not too often, but if you've got loads of Psykers, by getting a load of Ghast, then it becomes obviously more common. Now, there are two types of Psyker. There's Sanctioned Psykers, which can re-roll a failed willpower test once a game, but I believe there's only 2 Sanctioned Psykers in the game, both of which are hired guns, and then everyone else is a non-Sanctioned Psyker, which are basically just stock Psykers and are worth money based on bounties. Now, I don't actually know whether people using Ghast are worth credits to the gang that took them out for a bounty, because the actual model isn't a psyker, they just gain psychic powers. So if someone knows, let me know in the comments so that I can actually know for the campaign that I'll be running on the channel. Now we'll go over the actual psychic powers. And as I said before, some of them are now pretty mental, which is actually really cool. They always should have been. They should be high risk in my mind, high reward. And I think they are now. There are 6 disciplines: Biomancy, Chronomancy, Divination, Technomancy, Pyromancy, Telekenesis, and Telepathy, so 7. And each one of these has its own special ability for the discipline. And you only get this if you know powers off the same discipline. So a Delac champion, is it a Nact Ghoul that gets the powers? Because they have Delac powers, won't gain the special ability for, say, Biomancy, because they will have a power from 2 disciplines. But if you stick to all Biomancy, you will gain the special ability. So someone taking Ghast gains the special ability and the discipline power, because you can only gain powers from 1 discipline. The Biomancy discipline, your special ability is fast healing, so you make an extra recovery dice roll and choose which one to discard when you're recovering. So it's quite good, but it's useful situationally, keeps you around. I quite like it, and I think it goes with the discipline in... The discipline is really good. Geez, these are going to be really hard to say now. Arachnosis, which is a basic action, continuous effect, so it costs you 1 to cast it, 1 in the next turn, and 1 if you want it to keep it going. So you can't charge while using this continuous effect. Your Psyker gains from the power Clamber, Catfall, and Mighty Leap. Now, good for getting up and down places. Not the strongest of skills, but if you were playing on a multi-level board, can be really useful. I don't think it's bad, I just think it's not the best one in this discipline if you were choosing a power. Chameleon, which is continue effect basic. While the psychic power is maintained, rage attacks have a -2 to hit, provided the fighter does not move during their action. So you can cast this 1 turn and then use a basic action every turn to maintain the power while shooting with, say, a sniper rifle. So this is actually really good. Situationally, because you can't move while doing it, but can be really, really effective for keeping your ranged guy alive. So if you take some Ghast, get this power, really good. Then there's the Cause Pain power, and I think this is actually one of the best powers in the Wyrd Powers section. Basic, choose an enemy fighter that's already lost at least 1 wound or suffered 1 flesh wound within 18 inches in line of sight. They must roll an injury dice and immediately apply the effects. So if they've already taken a flesh wound, likelihood is they'll now be toughness 2, unless they're a Goliath or squat at toughness 4, down to 3. Immediate extra flesh wound or serious injury, which essentially results in a flesh wound. You can put people down in front of your Juve so your Juve can stamp on them. This is really, really good. It's a really, really good power because it doesn't rely on any check other than the willpower check. Then there's Stop Bleeding. Choose a friendly fighter, and this is basically the reverse. Choose a friendly fighter that suffered at least 1 flesh wound within 18. The fighter removes any flesh wounds, so all flesh wounds that they currently have. This is really good because you just heal your guys. There's not much, it's very obvious how they're really good, I think. So it's just such a good discipline because we've had Chameleon, which is good, Cause Pain, Stop Bleeding, Quickening. While this Wyrd power is maintained, your fighter's movement characteristics is increased by 3, weapon skill, ballistic skill, initiative characteristics by 1. This is one that you could cast 1 turn, and this is why I was saying that before. You cast 1 turn, and then you could charge the next, and you still get it for that turn. So it means you cast it 1 turn, increase your movement from, say, as a Goliath from 4 to 7, and then you stack your other things on top of that, like your D3 and other things. And then you get +1 to weapon skill as well, so it's really good for a combat fighter. Then Iron Arm, another continuous effect power. You gain a 5+ save against attacks made in close combat, made after any save rolls for armor and is not modified by AP. Third of the time, your Psyker is going to be immune to damage in combat. So good again. It's not as good, I would say, as Quickening, because combat in Necromunda tends to be, you get the charge and 80% of the time, unless you're a ganger with fists, 80% of the time your combat character just wipes the other guy. But Iron Arm's still very good, so a really good discipline, like top up to now out of that one. So then Chronomancy. The Chronomancer special ability. So once per battle, the fighter may perform an additional action during their activation. Now that one is excellent as a special ability. Extra actions in your turn are always good. To be able to use it on anything, because it's just an additional additional action is amazing. That has freeze time, which is a double. Everyone within 12 may only perform a single action for the rest of the round. So it's situationally good if you can get into the middle of people. It's double, so they have to move. Suppose you could move with your free action from the special ability and then cast it. But this is one of the ones that's been in it for a while unchanged. And I think doing damage is much better than this. So this is lower tier. I don't know the tier systems. So then suppress power. Choose an enemy fighter within 18 inches. This fighter chooses one of the target's Wyrd powers. That power may not be used this round. Now this is really bad. You can already deny within 18 inches and you're using an action to shut down a power. I know they don't get a chance to use it, but they could deny you using this power, of which you're trying to deny them using a power, when you could just psychic duel them and have another power to yourself. Zen Shootist, which is basic, continuous effect. While the Wyrd power is maintained, the fighter's BS is improved to 2+, and they ignore cover basically. Negative to hit modifiers by cover. You can't use it with blast or rapid fires. Sniper rifle guy, harpoon launchers, mining lasers, las cannons. Really good for your Wyrd, which might not have the best ballistic skill to start with. Walk through walls, double. Place the fighter within 8 inches of their current position. They may not be placed within 1 inch of an enemy fighter. Now I actually really like this one. At 8 inches you get in the same movement as a lot of gangs' double move actions. It's a double action, so you're taking 2 inches off an Orlock, say, but it's still a good distance, and you can just go through walls. You ignore terrain. So situational, because you could just run around it, but leading someone on a merry dance through a Zone Metalis, then just going through a wall, is really viable with this. Mirror Image. Until the end phase of this round, all to-hit rolls made against this fighter suffer -1 modifier. In addition, if this fighter makes a retreat basic action, they may not be targeted by reaction of attacks. I really like this one. Not continuous, you have to cast it every turn, but -1 to hit against all to-hit rolls, and allowing you to escape from combat better. A bit of a downside that you can't do this, a retreat basic action, and fire, but it can get you out of the way much easier if you want to fire with someone else if you do a group activation. Lucky Aura. While this Wyrd power is maintained once per round, the fighter may force an enemy fighter to reroll 1 successful ballistic skill or weapon skill check. Now, I really don't like this one. I don't like a lot of the ones that force other people to re-roll their weapon skill, ballistic skill. It can feel like you're robbing people of successes when that happens to the other people. And also, I don't find it that useful, because a lot of champions can get into the 2+ range. And making someone re-roll a 2+ isn't too useful when this is a basic act. So, Chronomancy, the main special ability is good. I like Zen Shootist, I like Walk Through Walls. Mirror Image I like, but thinking about it, it's only really those 2 powers and the main that is that good, so I'd put this on like a B tier. So then Divination, once per battle, you may re-roll any dice roll made during their activation. You can re-roll any number of dice, and can even be used on a roll made by an enemy fighter. So if you charge in, or you want someone to re-roll a save roll, you charge in, fail, you can get them to re-roll their reaction attack, so I don't know why you wouldn't re-roll your wound or hit. Really, really good. Once per battle, but so situationally useful. You don't have to say that you're doing this before you're doing it. Really good. So Precognition, which is special. So you don't use this during the battle. During the pre-battle phase, you may choose the scenario rather than rolling randomly, which is massive, which is really big. If the scenario has an attacker defender, the gang fighter always belongs to the attacker. If both gangs have a Wyrd with this power, no effect. Now this actually, if you're playing structured games rather than rolling randomly, it's not as good. I would, as an arbitrator, and in our campaign, I will be giving a mixture of random scenarios and given scenarios. So this won't be as good. But then again, in ours, most psychers will be coming from Ghast use, which this is just completely useless for. So yeah, but if you can get it off, getting the random scenarios, this can be the best power in the game by giving you the best chance to win. Foreboding, which is a double continuous effect psychic power. While it's maintained, the fighter may either gain the Overwatch skill or grant Overwatch to a single fighter that is both within 12 and line of sight of this fighter. I like this. Whether or not it's worth having a dedicated person casting a double action to gain Overwatch is a different matter, but it's situationally useful, so I wouldn't say it's ever bad. Misfortune, which is a basic. At any point prior to the end phase of the round, this fighter may force one enemy fighter within 12 and line of sight to reroll a single dice. Again, really good, especially combined with the special ability of Divination, where you can once a game reroll dice rolls within your own activation. This can stack really well. It's got that feel bad moment, as I said before, of forcing someone to reroll the dice, but as a psychic power-wise, is really good. Forewarning, until the end phase of this round, the first time this fighter is hit by an attack, on a 2+, the hit is ignored. That's really good. It's better, I would say, than Mirror Image or Chameleon that we've had up to now, which are the other damage reducing effects, because it's on a 2+, the hit is ignored. So someone can pop it by firing, like say, an auto gun into the psyker first, but it's wasting someone's action of a fighter entirely by ignoring a hit. Warp Whispers, which is special, another one done in the pre-battle phase, it increases your crew size by 1. In addition, if this fighter is a sentry, the alarm will automatically be raised if you finish movement within 6 inches of an enemy. I think it's good. It increases the crew size, which is good. I'd prefer my psyker to be doing more psychery things, though, is the only problem with that one. I think it's actually a really good power, it's just I prefer to blow someone up with mind bullets. Visions, double action, continuous. While this weird power is maintained, all enemy fighters within 18 that are in full cover count as being in partial cover, and all enemy fighters in partial cover count as being in open. Now this, I think, is really, really good. On all enemy fighters is amazing because you can get a lot in that. It's essentially a 36-inch diameter bubble that you reduce cover in. So it's like everyone having an infrasight, and it feels like your psyker's doing something unlike the one before. I really like it. It's really useful in pretty much every Necromunda game. I can't think of one where this wouldn't be useful. Yeah, it's a double action, but it's so useful for your entire gang that it's worth it. That's Divination. I'd say this is actually, I'd put it in the same tier as Biomancy, but like right up there, useful pretty much all the time, except for Precog and Warp Whispers, which if you get with, say, Ghast, it's not going to be useful, but the rest are really good. Even Foreboding, which I said before, is situational. Its Overwatch is still really good. So you can just sit there with a gun, you can give someone else with, say, like a heavy bolter Overwatch. I really like this discipline. Pyromancy, the fighter cannot be set on fire, so he's immune to blaze. So, fire cloak, yeah, good. I mean, if no one's got any flamers, but surely you have a Cordor gang running about with flamers somewhere near you. So, Body of Flame, which is basic continuous effect. While this weird power is maintained, the fighter ignores hits from weapons with blaze and melter traits. You ignore the damage of the blaze weapons. Melter it's good for. In addition, if the fighter ends their activation within 1 inch of the fighter, they must test to see if they are set on fire as if they had been hit with a weapon with the blaze trait. That is where this gets good. So you can cast this with a basic move and then double move the next turn because you don't have to maintain it to have the effect in the next turn. And you can run about setting people on fire. You can even charge into a group of people, gank one with your sword and set everyone else on fire. I really like this one. The initial bit of Blaze and Melter traits being ignored. Ignoring Melter's really good. Ignoring Blaze is sort of cancelled out by the fact that your special ability ignores the Blaze condition. Stoke Flames, which is basic. If someone's already subject to Blaze, centre a 5-inch blast marker over the chosen fighter. All fighters touched must immediately test to see if they're set on fire as if they've been hit with a weapon with the Blaze trait. This is anywhere within 18 on line of sight. I think this is actually really good for just sparking someone off. Coming to mind immediately is, well, from across the map, obviously your Flamer gets in range, but also having someone with a shotgun with Inferno rounds that can then, which are conveniently 18-inch range, can then set someone on fire with the Inferno gun and then centre a blast on them, setting everyone else around on fire as well. I think it's a really good power. Wall of Flame, which is basic continuous. Place a 5-inch blast marker so that it centres anywhere both within 12 and line of sight. The marker does not move but will remain in place while this Wyrd power is maintained. Any fighter that begins or ends their activation touching the marker suffers a strength 3, damage 1, AP 1 hit as if it had suffered a hit from a weapon with the Blaze trait. This is good at controlling where people go. Whether a 5-inch blast marker is enough to control people's movement enough, because it forces them to do a double move if they want to avoid that hit, but it's not doing loads of damage in itself. It's also not a bad power. All of these up to now are really solid. Flame Blast, while this Wyrd power is maintained, one weapon with the melee or versatile trait gains the Blaze trait. This is good. I think it's a good weapon. It gives you a 50% chance per hit, even if you're fighting a really heavily armed fighter, to set them on fire and therefore not be making reaction attacks. So I do think it's a really good effect. I'm not going to be relying on that to do damage. It's also going to be negated if you've got a fighter good enough to just take people out of action in melee. I think it's really effective in protecting your fighter by giving you the extra roll to set people on fire. So Molten Bolt, target an enemy fighter within 6-inch and line of sight. Make a hit roll using this fighter's BS. If a hit is scored, it is resolved at strength 8, damage 3, AP -3. As if it was from a weapon with the Melter trait. It doesn't say it has a short range, so you won't be immediately taking someone out. The Melter trait, I think, is more so that people with, is it Ceramite shields will ignore this hit or reduce the strength of this hit. But the strength 8, damage 3, AP -3, or if you can get this on a champion with a good BS, that's a really, really powerful attack. Scourging, which is basic continuous effect. The fighter vomits fire. While this Wyrd power is maintained, the fighter counts as being armed with the following weapon: template, strength 2, damage 1, blaze template. Now this is a bit of a weird one. I think that's a quite good weapon. It's going to be cheaper, at least in our campaign, from prospecting Ghast to get this than a flamer. The strength lets it down a bit, but I suppose you're mainly going for the blaze. What really lets it down is the fact that it's continuous effect. And I think that's a recurring problem with the continuous effects, in that the next turn you can't move, keep up the power and shoot your weapon. So you need to cast it one turn, move or fire. You can then move and fire in your next turn, the turn after, cast and move or fire. It just gives that weird bit of lag between being able to do stuff with your Psyker. Overall, I think this discipline is really, really good. It's not got the best of the captions at the side, which is just burn baby burn. Pretty standard, but the rest of the discipline page is actually really good. Technomancy. So the Technomancy special ability is may re-roll any failed ammo check they were required to make. I think re-rolling failed ammo checks is very good. It's very good. It's not one of the best of these special abilities. It's down near the bottom. It's very situational. The amount of times that I actually go out of ammo and I tend to play it safe on like the 4+ ammo roll stuff rather than 6s. Don't massively like heavy bolters because of that. I don't go out of ammo enough to think that that's brilliant. So maybe I've just got a bit of a skewed view. Maybe I just don't roll enough out of ammo results to see the benefit of that enough. However, the powers, they've got some really good ones. Weapons Jinx. The enemy must make an immediate ammo check for one of their weapons if they're within 18 and line of sight. Oh no, no line of sight, just within 18. So that's really good. I really like stuff like that. Like, there's a card, I think it's for Orlocks or Basic, that essentially does that. And it's really good. You can just knock someone's heavy bolt. You can punish them for having a heavy bolter, a plasma gun, stuff like that with a 6-up ammo check. This can just click them, basically. And they don't even have to have fired for you to do this to them. You could do this in a Zone Metalis through walls. This is an excellent power. If you can pick Technomancy and pick this power, this is possibly one of the best ones that there is. Overcharge, which is basic continuous effect. Basically, +2 strength, +1 damage to a weapon, gains unstable. Whether it's worth that continuous effect sort of lag that I just went through with the Scouring power in Blaze, I don't know. It is good. You could give this to something with a heavy bolter. I like this power, but the continuous effect sort of means it needs to go on a heavy weapon that's not got to move because it's got a long range. And then it's debatable whether the Chronomancy Zen Shootist is better for longer range weapons, or whether Visions is just better for your entire gang than this is on that one guy. Hardening, continuous effect, improve their save rolls by 2, or gains a 5+ save if it didn't have one before, however reduce movement by 1. This is really, really good for a tank, obviously, +2 save. Yes, it's a maximum 2+, but having just that one person that can tank damage, it's up there with really good effect stuff, like the -1 to hit, -2 to hit in combat, stuff like that. Really like that power. And now we get onto some of the bit weirder ones, but potentially some of the best ones. Manipulate door simple. You can open or close a single unlocked door anywhere on the battlefield. Any door on the map. So an enemy far away has just opened a door. You can shoot them and then just close the door, which is really big. It is so much battlefield manipulation, and the fact that it's anywhere on the map makes it much less situational, as it is good pretty much all the time. Manipulate lumens. The pitch black rules immediately come into effect, or immediately end if they were in effect. So that means you can, if you've got a short range gang, you can turn the lights off, get close, and turn them back on like in Snowpiercer, and all hell breaks loose. It's an excellent, excellent power. As an arbitrator, you'll have to rule whether that works in the Ash Waste, but it's a really, really good power. Basically, it's a really good ability to have everywhere but there, and possibly there as well. There is no real downside to that one. Crack lock. Choose a single locked door within 18 of the fighter. It immediately becomes unlocked and open. Alternatively, this fighter may immediately open a loot casket anywhere on the battlefield, choosing its contents. I don't know whether that would get you the loot, or whether the loot would just become revealed. I think it would just get you the loot. It would especially come into stuff like scenarios where you have to open certain loot crates. It could be really useful. Choosing a single locked door and opening it goes really well with the manipulate door action that's also on this list, and you can stay within this discipline doing that. Like, there's really good synergy within this list of those three. Manipulate lumens is excellent. Hardening is just as good as any disciplines. Weapons Jinx I think is really good. The worst is something that gives you +2 strength, +1 damage unstable, and I think that's one of the best psychic disciplines. So on to the final two. We've got Telekenesis, where you get Fists of Fury, so this is where your warrior monk comes in. When the fighter makes an unarmed attack, increase both the strength and damage by 1. So this can pair really well with Orlok, King Hit, or One Punch, because it adds it to that one attack. So your One Punch person could basically become strength 9 and just be punching their fists through armour completely unarmed. So this psychic power has psychic power discipline has Assail, which is a basic. Target a single enemy or obstacle that is both within 12 inches and line of sight. This fighter makes it a hit roll using a BS. If a hit is scored, move the target D3 in any direction. If they were standing, they become pinned or prone. If they come into base contact with the fighter or terrain, they stop moving and suffer strength 3, damage 1. And basically it does it to the other fighter they come into contact with as well, and also they become pinned and prone. This one is excellent. You can throw people off ledges, throw people off moving vehicles. You can pin 2 characters in one action with this. I think this is a really, really good, strong start to this discipline. Crush. Now this is a really good one as well. So Crush is 12 inches. Make it a hit roll. If you hit, you basically got to make a save roll for the enemy makes a save roll for their fighter. And if they pass, they get an injury dice rolled against them, ignoring everything else. So when you get to the 3+2+ save tanks that start wandering about after 4 or 5 games, this can just punish them for that. It's basically a long-range web gun in that effect, in that it bypasses wounds. If a hit is scored, the obstacle is destroyed as well and removed from the battlefield. So this is really big. You can remove terrain from your opponent's side of the battlefield. You can hide behind heavy cover and take away their heavy cover. So any form of battlefield manipulation, if you notice, I'm really liking. Force field, continuous effect basic. Basically, it's improved save rolls by 1 for this fighter and friendly fighters within 3. This stacks really well. You gain a 6+ save if you don't have one, but really where you want this is taking your mesh armor to a 4 or taking your mesh and underlay to a 3. So it stays really cheap, but just with the additional effect of this power, you're getting a really good armor save. Hailstorm. Immediately make a to hit roll against every friend or fighter within 12 inches of this fighter using the fighter's BS. Every hit scored is resolved at strength 1, damage 1, AP dash. This is rubbish. Strength 1 is just not good enough, and it would be balanced out maybe if you were making 2d6 to hit rolls against them, but 1 roll on the fighter's BS and only resolved at strength 1, damage 1 is basically not worth ever doing. Force Blast. Enemy fighters that within 3 inches of this fighter are pushed D3+1 away. Lets the enemy do an initiative test if they were going to be pushed off a ledge. So not as good as a sail, I think. Although it does it to all of them, I think a sail is better because you just throw people off. Levitation, finally. Movement increased by 3 and may move freely between levels, ignore all terrain, and can never fall. Although this is really good for moving between levels, I actually think walk through walls on the Chronomancy discipline is much better, because the ability to go through impassable terrain with that Chronomancy discipline is just much better than being able to move freely up and down. I think this is like high B tier. Crush is good later in the campaign. Assail is good for pushing people off stuff. I like Force Field, whether the +1 save only within 3 inches is that good. I don't think so. I think Technomancy is well up there, so let's ignore that one. I think Divination's visions of taking partial cover down to everyone in 18 is just so much better than things like this, that this is B tier. Then Telepathy. So the Telepathy discipline has Fearful Aura. If an enemy makes a charge double action that would result in them making 1 or more close combat attacks against the fighter, they must make a willpower check before moving. If this check is failed, they cannot move and their action ends immediately. So this triggers every single time this happens. So I think this is a really good special ability because it's just a constant trigger. It's not just once a game, so that really buffs it. If it was once a game and did this, I think it'd be garbage. But doing it every single time someone wants to charge you is basically the fearful skill, or fearsome skill. So this has mind control, basic, continuous, Choose a single enemy fighter that is both within 9 inches and line of sight. It makes an immediate shooting basic action, even if they have already activated, targeting an eligible fighter from their own gang, chosen by the Wyrd player. Now, this is one of the ones that I was referring to before. It looks really good. I think the idea is really, really good. However, use it. I don't know why it's continuous effect, because it's just make a single shoot basic action. So why would it not just be? I think that might be a misprint. Because it's in line of sight, I don't think it's very good. This is what I was referring to. I think blasting someone in the head with your own bolt gun is much better. Terrify double. Choose an enemy fighter within 18 in line of sight. The fighter must immediately make a nerve test with a -3 modifier or become broken. Now, I think this one is really good. That -3 modifier. I don't really like things that are just straight tests to your enemy. But the -3 modifier makes this really horrible to face for your enemy. Because you don't have to roll to hit with it. You just have to get the psychic power off. And then they have to do that test at -3. Invisibility. Double action continuous effect. While this Wyrd power is maintained, the fighter cannot be targeted by ranged attacks. If for any reason this fighter makes any action other than move, this power immediately ends. So this is really good, not for sitting back and shooting, but for getting your combat characters or close range shooting characters close. I actually think that's a really good power, but just it's really powerful. It doesn't seem to fit right in my head. Maybe horror stories of old invisibility in 30k really puts me off. Mental Assault basic. Choose a single enemy fighter both within 12 and line of sight. Both this fighter and the target must make a willpower check. If both checks are failed or the target passes, there's no effect. If this fighter passes and the target passes, or this fighter passes and the target fails, the target becomes prone and pinned and loses their ready marker. God, that's a really hard way of saying take another willpower check for yourself, and if you pass, your target becomes prone and pinned. Because that's basically what it is if you fail, there's no way that your target becomes pinned. And if you pass, even if your target passes, the target becomes prone and pinned. So yeah, basically it's just if you pass. Take another test. Take your willpower check to cast the power. Take another check. If you pass, the target becomes prone and pinned. So I think it's a good power. It's that auto pin. Like, it goes through Nerves of Steel, which I think is massive. This is a really good way of pinning those Goliath champions with Nerves of Steel that you can never stop from charging you, it seems. So I really think this is a good power. Whether you'd go for this discipline just with Terrify Mental Assault, I don't know. Hallucinations. Choose an enemy fighter within 12. The fighter becomes subject to the insane condition. Really, really fun is what I will say about this one. Applying the insane condition to people is excellent. Potentially having 2 fighters with insane because you've taken some Ghast, gone insane and made someone else insane, even better. I think it maybe should have an increased range. I don't think it's actually that good, but I really like the effect. I think it's really fun for a campaign. Unbreakable Will, basic, continuous effect. Whenever a friendly fighter takes a nerve test or makes a willpower check within 9 inches of this fighter, they may use this fighter's cool or willpower instead of their own. So being able to use the fighter's cool for nerve tests is situationally very good. The amount of times I actually find that comes into it because of how many times nerves powers or nerves tests go off. I think I'd prefer mind bullets is basically what I'm saying. I'm struggling for words, but I'd much prefer to just shoot mind bullets at a yak than I would to be able to give my cool to someone else. Maybe that's because I play Orlok and there are other ways that I can give my cool power to people, my cool stat to people, but that's just my feeling of that. Yeah, that is my thoughts on the psychic powers as they are in the game, minus the more out there psychic powers like Delac. I really hope you've enjoyed this rundown. I hope you find it useful. just like my quick thoughts on the psychic powers. Psychic powers are now much more usable in Necromunda. They're much more attractive to take. I hope the players in my campaign know what every psychic power does now, and will be using them in the campaign. And yeah, that's all from me. If you liked the video and you want to keep seeing this sort of Necromunda content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, comment below. It helps me see what you guys want to watch, and it means that I will produce more videos like this. If you really like them, there is my Patreon link below, in which we now have a Patreon reward, which is the Bearfoot Miniatures dice tray. So if you want to get hold of that or just support the channel, there is that on offer now. And thank you for watching. I hope you have had an informative time.